Much has been made about the antisocial behaviors of internet moderators. The profession of a full-time Janny typically attracts those desperate for any sense of power in their life. As a result, these individuals often make a fool of themselves, looking for any excuse to micromanage those involved in their respective communities. This phenomenon has been well documented on websites like Reddit, but believe it or not, through my research I discovered that the moderators over on Discord are somehow even worse. While Reddit tends to have at least some semblance of site-wide standards for its power users, on Discord they can seemingly get away with just about anything as long as it isn't illegal, and even then it's a mixed bag. So after a deep dive into the subject by me and my team, I want to go over some of the platform's most notorious moderators. But before we go any further in today's video, I just want to give a big shout out to today's sponsor, Temu. Now I'm sure most of you watching today have heard of Temu before because they advertise quite a bit, but for those who haven't, it is a website where you can get things for extremely cheap. Just looking at the app right now, you can get really good deals on things like furniture, electronics, home goods, and even sportswear. I really like using the app because you can browse through it and find the most weird of things and then click one button to get it delivered right to your door. If you want a pair of sunglasses, they have that. If you want a movable desk, they have that. If you want to roll up a wooden garden walkway, they have that as well. And since you're watching today's video, I actually have a promo code that allows you to get a $0 gift. If you download the Temu app, open it, and type my code KOF3649 into the search bar, it will be your key to unlocking a $0 gift. They have a wide variety of products to choose from, so I suggest clicking the link in the description down below. Those who are passionate about game design have likely heard of Godot, an open source video game engine that allows anyone to create their own video games. Of course, this can be an overwhelming experience for those just getting into the profession, and thus seek guidance or advice from fellow users of the program. Many found themselves on Godot Cafe, an unofficial Discord server dedicated to troubleshooting and community building. That being said, the community gained a reputation for unfair moderation practices, and one name continuously came up, XanNX. On the Godot subreddit, one user inquired about the ban appeal system for the Discord. I was banned a long time ago due to a heavy dispute with XanNX, which led to all of the mods being in disagreement with one another and me being banned. In light of Godot 4's release, I feel I can forgive the ban and would like to appeal it. From what I hear, not if it's related to Xan. Just banned me for thumbs downing a message he sent. Bro is power tripping like crazy. Witnessed this earlier today. The user made some joke which XanNX didn't like. The user got banned, so it's not visible anymore. Attached to the last comment is a screenshot of the notorious mod himself, attempting to enforce his own personal code of conduct. Ah, that's becoming a ban now. More shitposting equals ban. Hope it's clear. Answer this with anything but okay or yes, and you're banned. Make any joke of any kind, and you're banned. Hope it's clear. Literally the walking embodiment of the no fun allowed meme. A few months later, a second individual took to Reddit to describe their experience with Xan. This user noticed a trivial rule that had recently been implemented, in which moderators were instructed to ban anyone with a Pepe the Frog profile picture as he deemed it racist. All of this being considered, the user felt as though banning individuals without warning was completely unnecessary, and voiced their concerns. They were ironically banned for this. Users familiar with the mod found the situation extremely ironic as he had a history of using the N-word with a hard R, specifically that of the sand variety. This obviously made the concept of not allowing Pepe the Frog profile pictures extremely hypocritical. And also, Pepe's not racist. According to Xan, he himself is a Muslim person and used the term solely in a self-deprecating context. But from my experience, I don't think Middle Eastern people get a pass. Moreover, he clarifies that he has since stopped using the term. The moderation staff of the Godot subreddit quickly removed this post and prevented anyone from commenting further. They also provided a lengthy statement, announcing that they would be reversing the ban, but not punish the Janny responsible. Since someone brought up some 2016 messages using a derogatory term as a manner of self-deprecation, this was wrong. And Xananax made that clear on multiple occasions, including today in this thread. So there's no point asking us to ban Xananax for using these terms in the past. People do change and evolve. Perhaps Xan had moved on from his internalized racism, but he clearly hadn't changed his moderation habits. Once again, discussions about his heavy-handed enforcement of the rules became a topic of discussion on the subreddit. Supposedly, one of the moderators made the statement, "If someone has an issue with politeness, they can f*** off." One of the server's members found this to be deeply ironic, and responded in kind, resulting in immediate ban from the server. The comments were all quick to blame Xan. Somehow I guessed who the mod was just by reading your post. The user even confirmed that they were in fact banned by the well-known staff member, although no amount of negative sentiment was enough to warrant his official suspension. That being said, Xan would break through the Godot community and become a target of a much bigger stage. In late September 2024, the following tweet would go viral. "It makes sense, doesn't it? Woke studios always use pre-built engines to make games because they can't build their own engines." A fellow user mocked the comment, saying, "If you've ever wondered if a game is woke, here's an easy test. Check if the game was made using a game engine." This viral tweet would eventually make its way to the Godot Twitter page, in which they proudly described themselves as woke, and called on fellow game developers to share their woke projects. The Godot community was split on this, with a handful of members of the Discord server voicing their displeasure with the tweet. This is where Xan comes back into frame, banning every single person who criticized the statement. This entire situation was picked up by the anti-woke gamers you would imagine who would pick it up, who dug deep into the mod's history and uncovered his old Discord messages. Godot themselves were under a massive wave of backlash, and their subsequent banning of detractors only fueled the moral outrage taking place. As a result, they released two statements. The first apologized for the negative attention the tweet caused, and subsequent harassment directed towards their community members. The second directly addressed Xan, whom they completely disavowed. "We strongly condemn the harmful language used by Xananax, moderator of an unofficial Godot-related Discord server. We want to clarify that Xananax is not hired by nor a spokesperson for the Godot Foundation. As an organization, we have our own official Discord server, moderated together with new volunteers vetted by our team." Many took issue with the assertion that the Discord was unofficial, with claims that it was accessible through their official website. What's more, prior statements from the Godot Reddit mod team gave no indication that the server in question was unofficial. In fact, they directly refer to it as the Discord, implying that it was the sole server for the community. Regardless, Xan would not be held accountable for their behavior, and continues to moderate the server to this very day. Unsurprisingly, Godot is not the only game engine Discord server to face this problem, with one of the most popular softwares in the industry having a history of ridiculous moderator practices as well. Much like Godot, Unity is a popular game engine used by developers both large and small. Likewise, it also utilizes community servers to help its user base learn and troubleshoot their process of making games. Another unfortunate similarity is the existence of a power-tripping Jenny going by the name Fogsight. The story begins sometime in December of 2024, when a user named Armand inquired about a technical issue they were having with the software. A fellow user named Halfspace provided a thorough and helpful answer that resolved the problem, as evidenced by Armand's response. But in a shocking turn of events, Halfspace's message was suddenly deleted, and moderator Fogsight gave him a stern warning. "Don't post large language model-generated answers on the server. Read community conduct." While the original post was deleted, it appears that Halfspace had copied and pasted a few lines of code that were meant to resolve the issue. It's also worth pointing out that there was no direct proof that the code was generated by AI, and Fog was simply making assumptions. Halfspace asserted that his response was not AI generated, to which Fogsight threatened to ban him from the server. Understandably, the user was deeply frustrated, and in response, he and one of his friends replied with a thumbs down emoji and the letters F, O, and G. This resulted in him being permanently banned from the community, with the stated reason being spam. He quickly took to Reddit to voice his frustrations, and the wide consensus amongst the community was that Fog was clearly in the wrong. Fellow members began antagonizing the Janny, resulting in even more permanent suspensions. Pretty amazing how a mod can have a bad day and ban someone for helping another member in the server. I will likely be banned too, but your unprofessionalism is beyond disgusting. Spoon-feeding someone an answer is not helping. They did that before as well. Also a reminder, there's no off-topic here. You are continuing off-topic to make yourself look good by attacking new developers. Is the Discord server only for intermediate devs and above? Now I know you are doing this on purpose! And seeing as you have no constructive activity on the server, next off-topic remark will result in a ban. I rest my case. You clearly want to bully people. I will gladly be banned if Unity has people like you for the official mod team. Another user took advantage of the server's form section to create a thread titled, "People shouldn't get banned for reacting on a message." Fog indignantly rejected the notion, stating that spam in any form was completely unacceptable. He then doubled down and claimed that responding to his messages with, quote, "offensive emojis" was in fact a ban-worthy offense. Attached below was a screenshot of someone reacting to his message with a gay pride flag emoji, insinuating that he was a homosexual. Fog clearly believed that calling him gay was a line too far to be crossed, and it seemed that no one was able to get through to him. Notably, Fog rejects the idea that Half's original message was helpful, claiming that all he did was spoon-feed him code. This would become the central argument for both Fog and those sympathetic to him when defending the ban. Notably though, there was no genuine attempt to prove that the code was AI generated as previously accused, and the initial argument of spam violations was completely discarded. What's more, this would become deeply ironic considering that Fog's site was caught spoon-feeding code only a few years prior. Both the Unity Discord server as well as the Reddit devolved into complete disarray, as the primary focus shifted away from game development and solely onto its infamous moderator. The subreddit issued an official statement, clarifying that they had no affiliation with the Discord server or its moderation staff. This issue became so large that the lead community manager of Unity Engine, Major Nelson, promised to look into the situation. One user summarized the entire debacle very accurately. "Anyone who's ever thought, whoa, Reddit mods suck, has never had to deal with Discord mods, who almost universally make Reddit mods look great in comparison." Some speculate that Fog's site even began using a burner Reddit account to argue with his detractors. Just saying encouraging a bunch of people to dogpile on the Discord server, contributing nothing and derailing the people actively helping other people with their questions isn't a good look either. While there is no concrete proof that this is in fact Fog, you have to wonder who else it would be. That being said, it appears that Fog's site would retain his moderation permissions to this very day. Although that's not to say there hasn't been lasting effects from the situation. In fact, people continue to report issues with Fog and his moderation enforcement. One user claims to have been muted for 3 days after using the wrong channel to ask a question. Another claims that they discussed an AI Unity tool they had created in a dedicated AI channel. In spite of receiving no warnings, they were permanently banned by Fog's site for, quote, "ignoring warnings and reposting ads." Many have echoed the sentiment that the Discord is a toxic environment, in which many are afraid to engage at the risk of unintentionally breaking the rules. It goes without saying that Fog's site was extremely thin-skinned. However, some moderators take it to a whole new level, using their status to enact revenge on those they encountered in video games. When playing online video games, you likely never consider the possibility that interactions you have may escalate into external interactions. But this next story involves just that. Arena Breakout Infinite is a free-to-play first-person extraction shooter released in late 2025, though it was available for beta testers as early as May of 2024. Aniro was one of these beta testers and had a vested interest in the game, being an active member of the Arena Breakout Discord server. Aniro loaded into a match with a random player named Blue Lev who became particularly hostile almost immediately. He questioned why Ani and their third teammate were so far away from him and harassed the players as they took damage from an enemy team. Aniro successfully eliminated an enemy and went to the body to collect his hard-earned loot. That's when Blue began accusing him of doing nothing and claimed that the loot actually belonged to him. Understandably, Aniro lost his temper and called his indignant teammate a quote-unquote retard. In response, Blue remarked, "I am going to look up your names," before splitting off from the crew and extracting. Once the match had ended, Aniro noticed that he had been banned from the official Arena Break Discord. As it turns out, Blue was not just another player, he was one of the moderators on the community server. The decision to ban him was obviously ridiculous, as Ani had not broken any of the rules inside the server. One of the moderators for both the subreddit and the Discord responded to this, calling the mod's behavior concerning and promised to look into it. A short while later, they returned to announce that they had decided to undo the bans of both himself and his teammate. Even with this, the community was not satisfied and began calling for Blue's suspension. Why not ban the mod? There should be zero tolerance for such behavior, really disgusting. You gotta remove this guy as a mod. Set a standard now for what you'll tolerate. The fact that this guy represents your community is embarrassing. To make matters worse, the moderators added a qualifier saying that they would reinstate the ban if Blue was able to provide evidence of the infraction. Funnily enough, Blue claims to have recorded it, but conveniently refused to show anyone. Instead, he accepted the decision and left a passive-aggressive message for Aniro and his fellow teammate. "I am sorry, you're right about being penalized here. Calling someone a retard is still a punishable offense. Because you didn't commit any infractions on Discord, you will only be penalized there. Thanks, and feel free to keep enjoying our community here." Blue seems to insinuate that he would attempt to have the players suspended in-game, further implicating him to be a rude and toxic individual, which many noticed as a pattern. He would frequently take to the Discord to brag about kills. Specifically, whenever he killed a player, he would search their username in the Discord, tag them, attach a screenshot of their lost gear, and say, "Thanks for the loot!" That might be the most pathetic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Blue was actively creating a toxic and unpleasant environment, which many people have attributed to the game's recent decline. That said, it appears that Blue was never stripped of his privileges, and users continue to complain about the server's staff to this very day. Blue was clearly incapable of managing his frustrations, using his administrative privileges to obtain justice where he saw fit. This is not an uncommon theme for Discord mods, such as Jack and Cola, who took this issue to a whole new level. Project Gorgon is a recently released MMORPG by Elder Games Studios. The project first began development all the way back in 2009, and would spend the next 10 years in a state of limbo. The dev team made numerous attempts to crowdsource funding, failing to reach their goal in 2012 and 2014 of $100,000. Perhaps this was a warning sign that the project was never meant to be. Impressively though, they still persevered, finally able to fully crowdsource the game in 2015, and eventually released it in early access 3 years later. More time would pass before Gorgon was officially released in January of 2026. And reached a peak concurrent player count in February of a little over 4,000 players. Sadly, the player base has been notably declining ever since. All of this is important to understand, as it would become the catalyst for a massive meltdown within the game's official Discord server. By April 17th, the player count had dropped to below 14,000 players, all of which were counted on a global scale. This means that certain servers were struggling to maintain more than a couple hundred players at peak game time. Understandably, those who had invested their money into the project were concerned about its ability to last with such low counts. Members of the Discord began asking the game staff what their plan was to resolve the issue, to which they said they had no idea. That's when the user, Dr. Pepper, voiced their concerns. "This makes me seriously question if I should continue playing this game. Very disheartening that the current plan is that there is no plan to deal with the very noticeable server population issues. A lot of people are being vocal about this for a reason. We love this game, but it's a completely different game at 150 players during prime time versus 300 plus, and I don't think that can really be disputed. Please don't let the recent success of this game slip through your fingers, guys." That's when the lead community administrator, Jack and Cola, chimed in with a rebuttal. "If you're not comfortable here, then go play another game. Whenever we decide it's too low, we'll do something about it. We've said this countless times already. No, our stance will not change. If you can't handle that or accept that, I hear Ashes of Creation is a great game to play. And that's all I'm going to say about it, to save your fingers the work. Shortly after this, Dr. Pepper was banned from the server and took to Reddit to voice their frustrations. A fellow member revealed that shortly after the ban, moderators had gone back in the chat history and deleted a handful of messages to reframe the tone of the conversation and make Dr. Pepper look angrier than he actually was. Other users claim to have become familiar with the moderation staff and their hypersensitivity in regards to bans, demonstrating that this had become an issue for some time. What needs to be understood is that the Project Gorgon team is extremely small, and members of the staff typically wear multiple hats. Jack Incola was more than just the Discord's lead moderator, he was also the primary administrator for the actual game. As a result, people were having negative experiences with him seemingly everywhere they went. One individual uploaded a Steam review describing a negative experience with a mod, accusing him of power tripping and quoting him as saying, "Talking about bannable offenses is a good way to get banned." This lines up with other user experiences who have been banned for discussing the subject. And it makes you wonder if this antisocial behavior had something to do with the declining game players. Another user documented their experience attempting to report a bug in the server. They noticed that players outside of their party were unintentionally broadcasting the microphones to the public server. This was a clear issue in the system, and the player went to the Discord to inquire about how to report the bug. However, they were met with hostility by the moderator and eventually timed out for an entire week. One user was quick to identify the behavior as none other than Jack. The main GM has always been this way. You can search going back for years that people get banned for even slight criticisms in general chat. If the GM doesn't like you, they can and will ban you on a whim. In essence, many felt as though Jack was making the experience playing the game more stressful than enjoyable. And now, with the suspension of Dr. Pepper, paired together with the declining relevancy of the game, galvanized its player base. People took to the game's global chat and began mocking the internet janitor, calling him names and insulting his emotional intelligence. Jack, rather than attempting to de-escalate, began threatening the players. "The Steam-level permabans are next up. Who wants one? Start stepping out of line and I have to do the admin thing. That's how it works. When an admin says stop, that means stop. So this is going to end now or I start handing out bans because you failed to listen. That enough fair warning for you? Well, I tried to be nice. Perm bans it is then." I feel this guy was either bullied too much or too little in high school. Jack supposedly removed a large chunk of the server users for 30 days, including one individual who simply said, "Jack, you suck." What's more, his behavior was only de-incentivizing players to return, as well as those who might have been considering purchasing a copy. That's when the game's lead designer, Saitan, stepped in and spoke on the issue. "I understand Jack's message was unprofessional during a heated moment. We'll work on that. That's all there is to say on this topic right now." Jack's outburst was essentially chalked up to a heated gamer moment, which deeply upset the player base. Users pointed out the lack of apology, no promise of reversing the bans, and no statement on Jack's future with the game studio. Users who had poured literally thousands of hours into the MMO began leaving negative reviews on the game's Steam page, all thanks to Jack's actions. What's more, people continue to antagonize the dev team for their lack of action, provoking Saitan to once again respond. "Just stop, it's all stupid. The scope and scale of this incident does not justify this amount of constant baiting. Guys, I'm hoping everyone understands I'm bending the rules here and letting discussion of admin actions. But understand that I'm not going to discuss further actions about this in chat here. If you want to get your hate posting out, do it in a single message and then move on." The team clearly had no intentions of removing Jack, although many were surprised to discover that he had voluntarily stepped away from his position. While he wouldn't be leaving the team entirely, he would no longer play a role in moderating the community for the foreseeable future. Still, people were not satisfied with this conclusion. Many felt as though the statement left room for an inevitable return for Jack. The team also claims to have only banned 2 players who were unfairly punished, and the general consensus was that dozens more deserved to be reinstated. Worst of all, this new statement still offered no apology and shockingly apologized to Jack of all people. I want to thank Jack for his many years of hard work as community lead, and I want to apologize to him also. In the old MMO industry, it was a truism that you have to rotate your customer service leads every few years, because the job just grates at your soul. It requires you to be polite in the face of dickishness over and over. As his manager, I need to rotate him off to other roles sooner than this, and I'm sorry that I didn't. Today, the player base remains deeply troubled over the entire situation. Initial concerns of the decreasing user base have now become secondary to the general fear of booting up the game. Many believe that issues will continue to persist, with the server struggling to maintain 1,000 players at peak. Jack's downfall can be attributed to one major outburst that escalated into complete chaos, but other Discord mods wear down their members over time, until the issue cannot be ignored. Love in Deep Space is a mobile dating sim gacha game in which users are able to build romantic relationships with handsome digital men. The app has been massively successful, generating $500 million in revenue. As you can imagine, there is a large dedicated community for the app, and thus has a vibrant and active Discord server full of community members. Of course, the server is not without controversy since we're talking about it here, and the Discord would find itself in disarray only a few weeks after its release. In January of 2024, users reported the frequent bans, mutes, and timeouts being issued to members without warning. The original poster notably identifies one moderator by the name of Raven as the primary culprit, calling for her removal from the server. And this was not a one-time occurrence. That same day, a user posted an interaction they had with Raven, politely inquiring about a mute they received on their account. "Hi Raven, sorry to bother you, but I was wondering what I did wrong to warrant a mute. I'd like to know so in the future I won't repeat the same mistake. Thank you." "It's been a few days, so I don't remember at this point. You are probably breaking some rule." "I'm sorry, but that really isn't a clear answer. Can you please elaborate?" "I gave you my answer. You broke the rules. It isn't my problem if you're unable to accept it. Read the rules and you probably won't make the same mistake." "I'm not sure what I did to deserve an attitude, but my bad if I offended you. I'm just confused is all. I didn't even receive a warning." "Don't care. I'm ending this discussion." Raven then blocked the user, making it impossible for them to respond further. On top of this, fellow members also gave their 2 cents about Raven and her reputation for power tripping. Raven is a horrible mod and they should be removed ASAP. They are rude and unprofessional, they give no warning, and I actually have made over 30 friends now because we've all been wrongfully muted/timed out by Raven, and met with sarcasm/emotes from her as replies, when we are genuinely confused on the reason for punishment. It was clear that in a short time, Raven had already managed to cultivate a negative reputation, but now that discussion about her behavior was being had, the situation began to escalate. A handful of different posts were made to the app subreddit, and eventually found their way back to the official Discord. Raven was quick to shoot down any and all discussion about the situation, and other members of the staff were backing her up. "Just want to say that this conversation about a certain mod is getting rather off topic and disrespectful. She's also a person and did her best to assist around the server. Let's please stop the conversation here. The topic has been discussed in length and off topic already yesterday. Further discussion is no longer productive and would only serve to inflame." This issue eventually made its way to the Gacha Gaming subreddit again, which offered a hub for further discourse when banned off the Discord. Users revealed that they were being removed from submitting complaints to the mod mail in spite of the fact that they were directly instructed to do so by the staff. As a result, those outside of the server would catch wind of the negative reputation and voice their concerns about joining. In response, users began creating their own fan servers for the game, which ran the risk of being problematic. As you can imagine, a game like Love in Deep Space attracts those with a certain set of proclivities, which translates into a wide array of NSFW behaviors. While the game is meant for an adult audience, it is impossible to fully verify the age of the Discord users. The OG server made an effort to restrict NSFW content, which unofficial ones may not take the liberty to do. In spite of all this, many were shocked that Raven was still a moderator after all of this fallout. It appeared the staff suspended her for a mere 2 days, a punishment many found to be insufficient. This fiasco would die down for some time, before being reintroduced later that year in September of 2024. As it turns out, the official server had only gotten worse. This included biased moderation, inconsistent enforcement of NSFW content, untimely responses from moderation, and unjustified bans. Notably, one user states that Raven was no longer part of the team, meaning she was either removed or left quietly shortly after the initial controversy. So it's clear that the issue was far greater than just one Janny. Raven's status as a power-tripping moderator remained relatively isolated to the community they monitored, but sometimes Discord users managed to make national headlines through their antics. Helldivers 2 was one of the most successful video games to hit the market in 2024. To date, it has sold over 20 million copies and maintains a large active player base. Initial reviews for the software were overwhelmingly favorable, but this would change a few months later in May that same year. The developers announced that those who purchased the game on Steam would need to create a PlayStation Network account to be able to access the game moving forward. Perhaps this doesn't seem like a big deal, but historically, decisions such as these have always received immense backlash. The best example of this is when YouTube began requiring users to create a Google Plus account in order to access the website, which you can watch my video about if you want to know more about that circus. In the case of Helldivers, the negative response was almost immediate, and users began flooding the game's store page with over 100,000 negative reviews. The dev team would eventually capitulate and revert this decision, but unfortunately for them, this was only the tip of the iceberg, as their Discord server began to fall apart at the same time. It needs to be noted that the Discord community manager, Spitz, was also a full-time employee for the game, and her status led her to become one of the primary spokespeople as the controversy was ongoing. They were engaging with the community and attempted to bridge the gap and ease the tension. That said, many felt as though they were being dismissive and rude, as she would make comments such as, "It's not like this is the first or even the 14th mainstream game to require a third-party account that takes a couple minutes to create. But if it's a deal breaker to have to take 120 seconds out of your day to enter an email and password and then forget about it, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters." Members of the server unhappy with their tone voiced frustrations, with some claiming that they were banned for disagreeing with this sentiment. It seems as though Spitz eventually lost their patience with the overwhelming backlash and began liberally suspending users left and right. Veterans of the community were very familiar with Spitz, accusing them of having a long history of power-tripping behavior, making the claims all the more believable. To be fair, Spitz was not the only moderator under fire around this time, as a separate Janny named Purple Legion was creating a separate PR disaster themselves. Believe it or not, this was not Purple's first rodeo, finding himself at the center of a separate Discord drama scandal months prior. In February, the game was hosting a community event that was near completion, but the servers crashed abruptly, sending the community into complete chaos. Users in the Discord began spamming F to pay their respects, which deeply upset Purple for some weird reason. He then proceeded to ping every member of the Discord server with an angry message. "Warning at everyone! Spamming F will result in an instant timeout, followed by a ban if done again after timeout." As you can imagine, this only emboldened users to spam F even more, resulting in thousands of bans and the server being temporarily shut down. Many called for his removal following the incident, which in hindsight would have been the correct choice. Because now there were more eyes on the server than ever, Helldivers 2 would end up getting unwanted outsider scrutiny. Grums is a Twitter user known for his anti-woke video game-related opinions, and he had been mocking the decision to require a PSN account to play Helldivers. He particularly lashed out at the official Discord server staff, which provoked a response from Purple themselves. Someone who sexually assaulted many people he worked with, lost his position as CEO, now is a far-right influencer who had people attack more than one of our CMs. And their families. Anyone here who is a Grums fan, please out yourself so I can help you out the door. I did some research after seeing these claims and was unable to find any prior allegations of sexual assault relating to Grums. It would be one thing to make a claim like this if they already existed, but it appears that Purple simply pulled this allegation out of thin air. Because of this, Grums took to Twitter and tagged the Helldivers creative director, calling for them to take action. In response, the Discord muted the name Grums from the server. This led the Twitter anti-SJW micro-influencer to respond, "Jokes aside, this is a dangerous precedent. If you become too effective a critic of Sony and at ArrowheadGS and stand up for gamers, they will ban your name from the Helldivers Discord server and personally attack you. This is blatant abuse of community manager power. Worst CM team in history. Fire them." It's unknown if Purple is an actual employee of the game studio, but if so, him making baseless claims of sexual abuse on a company-run platform could be a legal nightmare for Arrowhead. It was clear that the current disposition of the moderation staff was untenable, and they quickly realized they needed to change their approach. Spearheaded by Spitz, the staff became much more empathetic and understanding of the player base's concerns, and made it clear they were fighting for them. Players making their displeasure known through reviews, refunds, etc. gives us more pull in the discussions with Sony. They don't read our Discord. It hurts to see the game's popularity suffer in ratings, but discussions are ongoing and our team is on the side of players in this fight. It appears they may have overcorrected in their efforts, causing a whole new issue as the higher-ups involved with Helldivers 2 took issue with her language. In essence, Spitz was justifying players review bombing the Steam page and refunding the game in protest. As you can imagine, the creators were severely displeased, resulting in the mod almost being fired from their position. Turns out that telling people to review bomb and refund a game isn't a popular decision with the publisher. But I'm still here and I'm glad that we all made a difference. In spite of their initial claims that their job was safe, Spitz was suddenly fired a few days later as she would leave one last post on her way out. I appreciate all the support, and I appreciate even more that everyone can play the game again without restrictions. I know I was taking a risk with what I said about refunding and changing reviews. I stand by it. It was my job to represent the community. That's what I did. With this, the people who were originally calling for Spitz to lose their job were now outraged that they had actually been fired. Over 13,000 people signed a Change.org petition to have Spitz reinstated, demonstrating just how much good faith they had earned during the incident. The Helldivers fiasco showed just how massive of a PR nightmare a moderation staff can create for its players and game. That said, mainstream headlines are not required to establish a reputation of unsavory moderation practices, and can be equally as chaotic regardless. If you have spent any amount of time on YouTube, you are certainly familiar with the mobile game Raid Shadow Legends. It has become a prominent fixture of YouTube sponsorships, to the point where it now is cemented as a meme. And I have to point out that even though those brand deals got a lot of hate from the community back in the day, they're what sustained a lot of edgy creators that you like through the adpocalypse. Another thing you might not know is that behind the app is a genuine game with a real player base, and naturally they had their own official Discord server to congregate. Unfortunately, the server was plagued with issues regarding its moderation, and two names in particular have stood out: Dragon Paws and Gremlin Boy. Firstly, discussion about Dragon dates back all the way to 2019, when a user posted to the Raid Shadow Legends forums discussing the mod's potential exploitation of the game. It appeared that Dragon had access to hidden information about the app related to damage multipliers, and users speculated that he was able to acquire this data with his moderation status. This notion was quickly shot down, and the thread was locked shortly after its creation. A short while later, a Reddit user took to the forums to reveal that Dragon Paws had banned them. Supposedly, the mod was scolding a user for making demeaning comments, before making a demeaning comment of his own towards an unspecified group of people. The user, Azure, pointed out the irony of this statement, and was promptly banned without warning. Fellow former members echoed a similar sentiment about Dragon and the mod staff as a whole. Around this same time, fellow moderator Gremlin Boy was also being called out for his frequent use of the ban hammer. A user supposedly had issues with a recent tournament in the game, in which they attempted to claim the rewards, but were unable to due to a technical glitch. They expressed their dissatisfaction in the server before contacting Apple support directly to rectify the situation. The support team provided them helpful advice, in which they shared in an edit to their original post. Apple is offering to refund up to 200 of purchases made within the event's timeframe if upon contacting the developer, the issue is not resolved or there is no response within 7 days. That's when Gremlin Boy chimed in with hostility. It says you claimed your rewards, so you probably got your rewards. If you want someone to look inside your account, you need a support ticket. Threats on this channel are pointless. Evidently, Azure's message was not a threat, and they felt humiliated by the implication. They then made efforts to contact a community manager to address the issue, to which Gremlin Boy began deleting their messages. Many would voice their frustrations with the Jannies over the years, with both Gremlin Boy and Dragon Paws being the main perpetrators. But things would come to a head in June of 2020, when the game suffered another technical complication during a clan boss event. This mod has been tripping out, banning people who report the CB issue from the official Discord and spamming for the past hour. Attached was a screenshot of Gremlin Boy angrily chastising the player base in all caps, telling them to stop inquiring about the issue. This post became a hub for users to voice their complaints about the moderation. Yeah, I have him and Dragonpaws blocked on Discord. Both of them just like to flaunt power, instigate, and just be plain rude. Trust me, the Discord becomes a better place without them. The situation had now boiled over, and a fellow moderator of the server would publish a lengthy response to the Raid Shadow Legends subreddit. To summarize, the mod denies any sort of unfair punishment in recent times, specifically defending Gremlin Boy and his outburst. It was clear that the staff were standing by their own, despite the community being deeply frustrated with them. Even if they weren't dishing out unfair bans, there was still a general sentiment that they created a hostile and toxic environment, and exercised their power to its fullest extent. Yeah, that mod Dragon Paws is a freaking douchebag. He acts unprofessional and rude AF. If you don't share the same opinion, he gets mad. They definitely need to screen those moderators or find a very mature mod who can oversee them all and give them guidance. Gremlin Boy and Dragon Paws are just out of control. They act like bad cops. Maybe the Jannies were here to stay, but it's clear that the dislike of them was not going anywhere either. It appears that some individuals had their bans revoked following the statements, but people have still reported issues to this very day. This situation occurred over 6 years ago, and it seems like Gremlin Boy is still a moderator. Dragonpaw's fate is less than certain, however it appears that any departure was likely of his own volition. These raid power players are ultimately small cogs in a much greater machine, but what happens when a community's most prominent figure becomes its greatest villain? Path of Exile is one of the most popular free-to-play action RPGs on the market. One of the core pillars of the game is the usage of rare weapons, which are coveted treasures amongst the player base. One way to obtain these weapons is through the practice of mirroring. An item called the Mirror of Calandra allowed players to duplicate these rare assets. Those interested in certain items could locate players who own them, provide them mirrors, and receive their own versions in exchange. This practice is what birthed the Forbidden Trove Mirror Shop, which facilitated the acquisition of rare objects in the game. This exchange service was created by a user named JNebula in mid-2019, and utilized Discord to allow transactions amongst players. Oddly, shortly after its creation, users began reporting issues with moderation of the official Path of Exile forums. One user claimed to be temporarily muted after accidentally pinging a role in the server. After the hour had passed, they voiced their frustrations at the overbearing response, resulting in their permanent removal. Another claimed that they were banned the moment they joined, likely due to their account being freshly made and mistaken as a bot. This led to an endless amount of comments from various users asking for clarification about the rules. Later down the line, a user took to Reddit to reveal they had been banned for discussing the TFT mirroring service on other servers. The user claims that they were suddenly banished without explanation and expressed their annoyance on the official PoE Discord server. A friend of the user made an offhanded joke that the Discord should ban TFT, which resulted in him also being blacklisted from the trading server. A few months later, another user claimed to have a similar experience, this time in a popular streamer's Discord. Perhaps it makes sense that a moderator for TFT may have stumbled across a negative comment in the official Path of Exile Discord server and facilitated a ban. But this new revelation made it clear that they were actively combing through multiple different servers to find dissenters, some truly obsessive behavior. Because of all this, trust within the user base of the TFT community was quickly eroding, and thus allegations of shady back-end systems began bubbling to the surface. A user took to Reddit to accuse the server of having a private ban book for the super elite members of the community. This came to their attention after a gamer attempted to make a deal with a fellow player who claimed that they couldn't sell to them because they were blacklisted on TFT. The user checked the blacklist and was unable to find their name, and their business partner mentioned the existence of multiple super private indexes. One of the GMs of the server denied the allegations, and fellow users also voiced skepticism of the claims. That being said, there were dozens of others who fully believed the claims on their face, reflecting just how low the community's trust was in the staff. Drama became such a frequent occurrence that the Path of Exile Reddit moderation team began discussing whether or not they should wipe posts about the drama entirely. Ultimately, they decided not to take direct action. However, the Reddit moderation staff had a habit of removing posts about the server regardless. After the TFT owner accidentally pinged everyone, gamers jokingly responded with a clown emoji. Shockingly, the staff permanently muted all of the offenders. When this situation was posted to the subreddit, it was quickly removed, sparking outrage in and of itself. Already there was a long and documented history of unsavory behavior from the moderation staff, although the responsibility was not placed on one individual in particular. This would change as TFT's creator, Jay Nubu, started getting involved, and discourse began surrounding his personal actions. As you can imagine, Nubu was more than just an administrator. He was also a fellow player of the game who utilized the services provided by TFT. A user named Desperate Fig listed a crimson jewel for trade, and none other than Nubu himself inquired about the item. After not receiving a timely response, he began spamming messages to the user, which left a bad taste in their mouth. In response, Fig raised the asking price and refused to trade with the owner. Shortly after, Fig was permanently banned from TFT for, quote, misleading prices with no intention to sell at listed price. Resentment began to grow towards TFT's founder, and was exacerbated further when prominent Path of Exile community member Local Identity accused Nubu of banning him as well. Nubu just banned me from TFT. Fortunately for him, I don't power trip and ban people from POB if someone pokes fun at me. For context, Local Identity holds a similar position to Nubu, being the founder of a third-party service for the game called Path of Building. As a result, he stood in stark contrast to TFT's leading figurehead, and further emboldened detractors. Frustrations were also brewing as many believed Nubu was price-fixing, as well as RTMing, which stands for real money trading. As the name suggests, this means Nubu was allegedly using real-life currency to acquire in-game items, a bannable offense per the terms of service in PoE. Tensions were now at an all-time high, and TFT staff announced that Nubu would be stepping down from his role as the leader. Bafflingly, this decision appeared to be a blatant fabrication, as he continued to be involved in the day-to-day responsibilities for the service. Notably, he had edited the official thread as recently as March 25th of 2026, over 2 years after the announcement. That very same day, it appears that Nubu was shockingly banned from Path of Exile. The consensus is he was finally caught for RTMing and permanently banned as a result. Perhaps this seems like a satisfying conclusion, but even his most prominent detractors were concerned over this decision. With their leader now banned, the future of the Forbidden Trove was now uncertain, which had become an essential fixture of the Path of Exile player base. To say Nubu didn't handle this ban well would be a massive understatement. He took to the TFT Discord server to plead with the game's developer, Grinding Gear Games, for them to reconsider. Please, if this reaches anyone at GGG, please reconsider this. This can be solved without needing to create all this damage. This is the worst day of my life, and honestly, I don't want to live anymore. Please reconsider this and talk to me. Nubu would eventually delete this message and issue a more level-headed statement. To summarize, he clarifies that he had no intention of harming himself. What's more, he announces he will be transferring ownership to ensure its continued prosperity. Most notably, however, is his statement regarding his propensity for bans and blacklists. For all my hate, I'll admit it. I deserve it. I made many mistakes talking to people, and I admit banning people for stupid reasons because my ego got hurt. I never got any power tripping fantasies, but I did power trip. As the server grew to a gigantic size, I felt kicking people who attacked me was justified because it was my home. I regret doing it. One thing I found especially interesting creating this video is that most of the notorious mods of Discord come from game-specific communities, which I think should be a warning to any game studio to keep their communities in check from unhinged fans. It's honestly incredible how one bad user can sour the core community of their product. And the fact that fans often find refuge on Reddit of all places for out-of-control Discord mods show just how toxic these servers can become. At the end of the day, we should all be a bit skeptical of those willing to work for free.